Awesome. All right. So, hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Security Headlines. Today we got a really exciting episode ahead of us because we're talking about a really nice tool that I personally use to secure my backups. And with us today, we got the founder of Torsnap, Colin. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, what is Torsnap for everyone that doesn't know?
So the tagline is online backups for the truly paranoid. Um, that pretty much captures it. Tarsnap is an online backup service. It is designed to run on Unix systems, although there are some people who use it on Windows via the Windows subsystem for Linux. Uh, there's people who use it on OS 10, which is mostly Unix, but not completely Unix. It works there just fine. But yes, it is an online backup service, as the name suggests. It is similar to tar. So anybody who has used the tar tool to create archives, maybe even creating archives on tapes, although far fewer people have actually used physical tapes these days, and it stores them all online. But it's designed with paranoia in mind. So everything is encrypted. You are the only person who has the keys to decrypt your data while I run the service that stores the data for you using Amazon S3 as a backend. There's no way for me to actually read your data. I can't even see the names of the archives you store, never mind the names of the files or how many files you have or the data in the files.
That's awesome. I feel like this is something we really need today in these times. But how did you get the idea for Torsnap?
So I started Tarsnap back in 2006, and at the time I was the FreeBSD security officer.
Okay.
I think it was August or September of 2005 that I became security officer. I think that's it. Anyway, I was FreeBSD security officer at the time, and so on behalf of the FreeBSD project, I was dealing with a whole bunch of security advisories that people had found bugs, but we hadn't disclosed them yet. We hadn't put out the patches. We hadn't put out the advisories. And one of the major things that the security officer has to do in FreeBSD is coordinate with other projects,
Oh,
because FreeBSD has a lot of code which is shared with other people. So we have OpenSSL, we have OpenSSH, we have SendMail. When there's bugs in these projects that get used by many different operating systems, we all have to agree on when we're going to send out our announcements, because you don't want to have different people announcing at different times, and then word gets out that there's this vulnerability, but there aren't patches available for some systems. It gets even more complicated when different operating systems have different versions. So with OpenSSL, for instance, we were usually running a different version of OpenSSL than most of the Linux distributions. So OpenSSL would announce they had this bug with a patch, and then I look at it, well, that patch doesn't work for us. We need to find a new version that works for us. So there were these coordinated advisories, and it was often a few weeks between when word came to us that there was a bug that needed to be fixed and when everybody was ready to put the advisories out. So I was getting advance notice of all these things, and
okay.
all this information was on my laptop. And one day I was thinking to myself, if anybody got their hands on my laptop,
Mm.
things could go very badly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it happened at the time. There were several different issues sort of all coming out at the same time, and so I'm thinking, okay, so this exploits a bug in the OpenSSL stack, and then this is a bug in the web server, and then this is a bug in the mail server, and
Oh,
you could sort of imagine how an attacker could sort of leverage one to get to where they can attack the next one. So yeah, I was a bit worried about that, and then I thought to myself, wait, if somebody gets their hands on my backups, they would also have access to all this
oh,
information.
yeah.
So, I mean, like most people, I hadn't been doing very good backups. Backup, unless you have something that can run from a cron job, if it's something you have to do manually, if it's your job to be a sysadmin, then an hour before you go home from work, you plug in the tape drives, whatever. But if it's your own personal data, you're probably not being all that diligent about it. So I thought to myself, I want to have a backup system that the backups will actually happen, which means, I really want it to be online, because that way it can run automatically. I have an internet connection,
Yeah.
it'll just work, but I really need it to be secure. because if somebody gets their hands on the backups, then
You're
it's not
screwed.
good for
Yeah.
FreeBSD or for anybody else in the world of computer security.
Yeah.
So I started looking around, and there really wasn't anything out there that had security that I would trust, really. People had hacked together some tools, generate tarballs and encrypt them with GPG, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
but nothing really sophisticated. So I started asking my friends, do you know of anything? Everybody sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, well, no, but if you find anything, let us know because we want it too. And at a certain point, he said, okay, well, maybe I should do this because security is what I do. Some of the work I did during my doctorate is somewhat related in terms of. So I did work on binary patching. You may have heard of BSDiff, which is a tool I wrote
Yeah.
for updating FreeBSD more efficiently. So one of the key things you need to know for doing efficient backups is to have some understanding of sort of how data changes from one archive to the next archive, because you want to avoid storing data inefficiently.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I had the background I needed, and I thought, well, nobody else is doing it, so maybe I should do it. And so I sat down and started writing code, and about a
How
year
was
later, I had.
the transition from? I guess you had the transition where it was, okay, the project just got bigger and bigger, and you were like, hey, I'm gonna offer it to other people.
So
How was that
yeah, I mean,
approach?
so the nature of online backups, or particularly with the design that Tarsnap has, it needs a backend that stores data. So Amazon S3 is what I wanted for that because it is incredibly reliable. Doesn't have fantastic performance, but it's good enough performance for backups. But they do not lose any data. I have never heard of them losing any data in the 14 years that S3 has been running. The
Wow.
closest that I'm aware of is that there was an incident, I think it was 2007, where they had an issue with a network card that was corrupting bits, and if you didn't properly sign your requests, then they wouldn't detect that they had failed a checksum or something. But I mean, that didn't affect Tarsnap because I was signing the requests properly.
Nice.
But as I trust S3. Everything since then has actually made me trust S3 more. Is seeing how they've responded when there's been outages. There have been times where they've had the option. Do they sort of hack something together quickly that should get it back running quickly, or do they just go the conservative route of, well, just shut everything down and go with what the recovery route they've tested, and they went with what they had tested before.
Nice.
It was an outage, I think, 2009 or 2010. The S3 was down for like 8 hours. And
Oh.
reading between the lines of their post-mortem, it was clear that they could have gotten it back up earlier, but they weren't 100% certain that they wouldn't lose data. So they went with what they knew was going to be safe. And for backups, I would rather have an outage than any risk at all of losing data. So yeah, S3 is what I want for the backend. But you also need to have some code sitting in front of that. For me running my own personal backups, I didn't want to be paying for a server sitting in EC2 all the time to be doing
Yeah.
that. I mean, there's smaller, cheaper instances now, but back then, it would have been $100 a month paying just to have something that could manage my backups for me. So Paul Graham commented some time ago, there are certain things that naturally have to be companies. And this is sort of one of those examples. Didn't make financial sense for me to build this backup system, quite apart from the time, to write all the code. But it's not something that makes sense to run for myself personally. But
Yeah.
if I had a whole bunch of other people using it, they could share the costs, and then it becomes something that makes sense to run. So from the beginning, I was planning on this being something that I would be running and other people would be using, and they would pay me something that would sort of cover the costs, and that way I wouldn't be paying lots of money for my own backups. And then over the years, it just became more and more people using it, to the point that it didn't take all that long before this was a entirely reasonable full-time job for me.
Oh. How long did it take before it went plus minus zero before you actually made some profit on it?
I mean, making a profit was a few months.
Oh.
I mean, a few months after it was publicly available. It was close to 18 months before I had people paying for Tarsnap, actually, before it came out of the early private beta. But I mean, most of that, like, it takes time to write code, right?
Yeah.
Once I had code out there that people could use and sign up through the website and pay me money, Tarsnap as the service was paying for itself very quickly. Now, for it to be a full-time job, it needs to pay me as well. So
Yeah, of
that
course.
took longer, of course.
Yeah. How did the community react? Were they all happy that you finally solved the backup problem, or
Oh yes,
how
I mean,
has user
people.
adoption been?
I mean, it sort of grew outwards from the communities that I'm part of. So the FreeBSD developers were some of the first people using it because they all knew me. I was a FreeBSD security officer, and then it sort of moved outwards from there to general FreeBSD users, system administrators, and Linux developers, and Linux sysadmins, and then people from OS 10 started using it, and then people from started wanting to run this on Windows using Cygwin. So, it really spread through word of mouth, going outwards from the people that know me personally.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So, how did you get into the FreeBSD, and what sparked your interest there? How did you get involved with FreeBSD?
So, in 1998, I think it was, my parents got a cable modem,
Oh,
at which point we had, high-speed internet access to the home. But it had one Ethernet connection. Didn't have Wi-Fi or anything like that back then. So we needed to have a computer that would share that to the rest of the house. So fortunately, that we had already networked the house together so that we could print things on our parents' printers. But we needed to do something to network the house so that we could all share this internet connection. My brother actually had already been experimenting with Linux by that point, I think. But he sort of looked around and said, OpenBSD is a thing that we should use for a firewall. So
okay.
he set up OpenBSD, and for about a year it was running the network address translation for us. And I can't remember exactly why it was that he wasn't around at the time, but that system broke. I think that it was an old hard drive, and the hard drive just gave out. So for whatever reason, my brother wasn't around, and it fell to me to fix this.
Okay.
And I got a new hard drive, I mean a new old hard drive from one of the old computers, and I couldn't figure out how to install OpenBSD.
Oh,
So
okay.
I looked around and found this thing called FreeBSD. It had the FreeBSD handbook, had nice instructions on how to install FreeBSD. Okay, I'll try doing this, and I
Nice.
managed to get FreeBSD to install.
Awesome.
So that became the network address translation box for the house. And I may be one of the only people who started using FreeBSD because sysinstall was easy to use. FreeBSD's old sysinstall has a reputation. I mean, we don't use it anymore, but that code had a reputation for being absolutely terrible, and it was originally written for FreeBSD 2.1 or something. And by the point I was using it, people had been saying for many years, we really need to get rid of this and get a new installer. So, but it was better than OpenBSD's installer, at least easier to use for me. So that's what I ended up with. It's what I could get running and share the internet connection. At that point, for my own personal use, I was running Windows all the time. But it was my first exposure to Unix systems, apart from the university's computers that I would telnet into. No SSH back then, just telnet.
Yeah.
But it was a start.
And then you
And
get deeper and deeper into it, or
yeah,
your
so
interest grew for it,
after
or
that, I went to university. I was doing research. So during my undergrad, I put together this project called PyHex, which was
Pi-Hex. Okay.
calculating the quadrillion, well, a few different things, but in the end, the quadrillion binary digit of pi.
Okay.
And this used something like 1,000 computers around the world. It was
Oh wow.
originally coordinated over email, but eventually I set up a web server on my Windows computer that was serving requests from around the world. Machines asking for more work and submitting their results back. So this was one of the major distributed computing projects of the late 90s, like the Mersenne Prime Search and distributed net. So when I went off to Oxford University for my doctorate, I was planning on doing similar sorts of things, but extending it to more general computations.
Okay.
Not just these embarrassingly parallel things like searches where you get a range to search and you either report back, yes, I found it, or I didn't find it. But computations where you'd have computers doing work and then exchanging data with each other and then doing more work, and a lot more coordination of the different systems. But I was worried that if I got a large amount of computing power coordinated, I would really need to worry about security. I would be having my code run on all these people's computers, and I don't want somebody to exploit that to take over their computers. I wouldn't want people to exploit. I mean, obviously, Bitcoin mining wasn't around at the time, but there's things that you wouldn't want people to be doing with other people's computers anyway.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Sending spam, for instance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really concerned about the security of the systems I had for coordinating all this. And so I thought, well, Windows isn't very secure, but I've used FreeBSD a little bit. It seems pretty good. So I was using FreeBSD for this. And novice FreeBSD system administrator, I had trouble with simple things like keeping it updated. Because at the time, when you wanted to update the system, it was, here's a patch file, apply this to your source tree and recompile everything.
Oh, okay.
So in 2003, I decided, well, this is too hard for me, so I'll make it easier for myself. And I wrote a tool called FreeBSD Update, which was binary security updates for FreeBSD. So one system would be building all the updates, and then everything was cryptographically signed, so it was secure, and then other systems would just download it and apply the updates. The name, of course, FreeBSD Update came inspired from Windows Update, which I had been using on my Windows laptop at the time. But, it was a tool, it was useful to people, so that sort of got me involved in FreeBSD.
So you became a package maintainer then? Or...
Well, I mean, FreeBSD doesn't have the concept of package maintainers the way that Debian does.
Okay.
I became a FreeBSD developer, so somebody with commit rights to the tree, and I joined the FreeBSD security team originally, actually, mostly just so I would have advance notice of the security patches, so that I could get the binary updates built faster.
Okay, all right.
But once I was on the team, then I started saying, well, not sure that this patch is right. What happens if this, somebody runs this code against it, and find bugs in the patches. You find, this part of the advisory isn't written very well. How about we change it to this? And then eventually they said, well, gee, you seem to be, have a good understanding of this. How about you deal with this next advisory? So I sort of moved from being part of the team to writing more of the advisories, and then when Jacques Friedrich, the security officer at the time, needed to step down from the role. He was moving to work at Apple and just too busy working for them. They asked me to take over as security officer. So I had that role for, I think, 7 years.
Oh, why did you quit? Was it too time consuming, or?
Yeah, so around 2012, I think it was, 2012, 2013, something like that. It was just becoming an issue of time. Tarsnap was taking off at that point. So I had more customers sending me emails all the time. The FreeBSD security officer role, it's a difficult role to fill because you need somebody who has a very good understanding of security, who can write reasonably well to write clear advisories. They also need to be able to jump into an issue and work on it full time for a few days.
Okay.
So it's not really all that compatible with having a full-time job somewhere.
Yep.
It is, however, very compatible with I'm sitting at home writing code for something that isn't going to launch for a while yet. Because if I had to take some time off from writing code for Tarsnap to work on an advisory, I could do that, and then I'd get back to writing code on Tarsnap later. When I didn't have any customers, nobody's going to notice if I did work this day or a few days later. But yeah, it just became too difficult to juggle the two roles of running a startup with customers and being a security officer.
Oh. So are you working full-time on Torsnap right now, or?
Yeah, Torsnap has been my full-time thing for a long time now. I used to do some consulting, but again, that also got dropped around the same time as the FreeBSD security officer had, because I was just too busy with Tarsnap. I mean, I still contribute to FreeBSD. I'm the maintainer of the FreeBSD EC2 platform. And in fact, this came out of my needs for Tarsnap. I wanted to be running FreeBSD in EC2 because I wanted a nice secure server that I could administer easily. It didn't work in EC2 yet because they had a really old version of Zen and a whole bunch of issues. Anyway, I've given conference talks about all the things I needed to fix to get FreeBSD working. But yeah, so I talked to a lot of people in EC2. Amazon engineers have been incredibly helpful to me there, I have to say. Worked with people in FreeBSD who were working on the Zen support and a number of other things. Recently, I was working with Warner Losh because he was fixing some issues with NVMe drivers,
Oh,
which were causing issues with the latest generation of EC2 instances. So, part of my role there has been writing code, but more of it has been sort of coordinating between all the different people working in different bits of the FreeBSD tree that are relevant to EC2. But yeah, I'm sort of the guy that's in the middle of everything as far as having FreeBSD working on that platform goes.
nice. Did you imagine that Torsnap would be so big as it is right now? I looked on your website and like Stripe is running it, and a lot of
Yeah,
people are running it.
Stripe has been a user of Tarsnap for a long time. They started using it very early in their days, actually. I knew Patrick from Hacker News, so
Okay. Oh,
Tarsnap was actually one of the three first Canadian companies to use Stripe after
oh,
they
nice.
expanded. Originally they were just in the US. They expanded to Canada a couple of years later, and yeah, Patrick reached out to me and said, I know you've been waiting to use Stripe, but now's the time to get it set up. So yes, Patrick in particular, but also Stripe in general have been very helpful to Tarsnap over the years.
And you also have Michael Lucas, the BSD Space own book publisher, that's written a book about your tool.
He did. Yes, it's a very good book on the shelf behind this wall. I have a copy of it sitting, but yes, it's a Michael is an incredible author. He can take very boring technical content and make it sound interesting,
Yeah.
and explaining the command line options to tar is kind of boring technical content. But no, I mean, it's a fantastic book, and I've recommended it to many users of Tarsnap. And interestingly, it's also worked the other way around. People who have read many of Michael's books have bought that book and then decided to start using Tarsnap.
Great.
I don't think I would personally buy a book. I mean, as much as I love Michael's writing, I don't know if I would buy a book about a tool that I wasn't yet planning on using, but I'm glad that they did.
Yeah, I mean, that must help. Did you proofread it, or were you part
Yes,
of the book?
all the way through the process of writing it, Michael would send me a chapter or so at a time and ask me, is this all technically correct? Sometimes even while he was in the middle of writing a chapter. So I'm not quite sure about this. Sometimes he found issues in the documentation for Tarsnap. So the man page says this, but when I run the command, it does this other thing. So yeah, it was useful for me as well, just having him looking through things carefully. Yes, I did. I proofread everything very carefully because it's the only book about Tarsnap, so I definitely want to make sure it's accurate.
Absolutely. So Torsnap uses Scrypt a lot. Was Scrypt your first choice, or did you change the cryptography after a while,
Uh,
or how was
well,
that? Why did
so
you pick
so
Scrypt? Yeah.
I didn't choose Script for Tarsnap. I invented Script for Tarsnap. So one of the
Oh,
when Tarsnap first launched, it had, I mean, it still has key files with you register a machine, you get the keys to access, you encrypt the data, decrypt the data, access the server. When it first launched, those were not password protected. A lot of Tarsnap customers asked me, can you make these password protected? And to start off with, I just said, oh, well, just use OpenSSL, Enc, put it into a memory disk, something like that. But, enough people wanted it to be built into Tarsnap, so I eventually said, okay, I'll sit down and figure out how to do this. And then I was looking at the ways that people use passwords to encrypt files, and it really wasn't very good at the time. The key derivation function that OpenSSL Enc used was MD5.
oh,
Not
oh,
even like MD5 repeated 1,000 times like FreeBSD's password hash had been doing for 10 years by that point. It was just MD5 run once, which
oh.
means that if you had a file encrypted with OpenSSL Enc, you could search through the password space very quickly. You know, Tarsnap is backups for the truly paranoid. So I thought,
Yeah.
this is not good enough. I need something better. So I
Yeah.
looked at the literature about password-based key derivation functions, and it wasn't very good. I mean, there were a number of people who had this same idea of, well, take a function like MD5 and run it many times. That's something. Bcrypt effectively does that, although it uses the blowfish cipher, which is a bit more complicated than standard hash functions. The standard used for anything that needs to deal with government systems, of course, was NIST's PBKDF2. Again, it just iterates a hash function many times. So, I'm a researcher. I thought, well, how can we make this better? And,
Yeah.
you want to make something that is difficult, that is expensive to run on ASICs, custom designed chips. Well, you need to make sure that it needs a big circuit. And how do you make sure it needs a big circuit? Well, you can't have a huge amount of computation happening there, because you can't do a huge amount of computation on a regular computer very cheaply, and also lots of computation takes up lots of power. So, but what you can do is make it use lots of memory. So how do we make a function that you need lots of memory? Well, I went through several iterations, but eventually I came up with Scrypt. So yeah, Scrypt was the first key derivation function which is designed to use as much memory as you actually can with a key derivation function that runs a certain amount of time. If your function is running for order n time, it's impossible to use more than order n memory, because you can only write to one memory location at once, essentially. But Scrypt is asymptotically as secure as you can get. So after about 6 months of research and writing code, I had this new key derivation function, and I announced it at BSDCan, I think 2009, and about a week after I released it to the public, it was part of Tarsnap.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's been used for a number of other things since then, including various cryptocurrencies, although they tend to use a rather nerfed version of it. Litecoin started this with they took Scrypt, but they were worried that Scrypt used too much memory, so they limited it to, I think it was 1 megabyte of memory, which, since the whole point of Scrypt is it uses lots of memory, making a version of it that doesn't use a lot of memory is kind of missing the point.
Why did they do that? Because of performance, or?
I think it was an issue of they wanted to make sure that Scrypt mining could be run on small systems or small systems. They wanted to make sure that you could run an Scrypt client on a smartphone or something. They wanted to be able to run on systems that didn't have a lot of memory. Anyway, in any case, that design decision kind of missed the whole point of Scrypt. So I make the point to people when they talk about how Scrypt is being used in cryptocurrencies. No, that's not really Scrypt that's being used there.
No, it's a port of it. Yeah.
Well, it's a
version.
Broken port of it. Yes.
So something I think is also very, very good with Torsnap project is that you have a bug bounty on it with like clear guidelines of this is how you submit a bug. Mm-hmm. If you're a researcher and find something bad, this is exactly what you do. How was that gone?
So, I had actually been planning on doing this for a while, but it didn't happen until somebody found a serious bug and reported it to me. I think it was 2011. And then I said, yes, so I was planning on creating a bug bounty. Well, here's the bug bounty that doesn't exist, but you deserve the money anyway. And now I'll announce it for everybody else as well. It's been very successful. Far more actually in the couple of years after I first launched it. There were a couple of people who made very systematic attempts to go through all the Tarsnap code looking for bugs. There was somebody who, I think, the numbers are on the Tarsnap website, but I think he had well over 100 bugs that he found. Wow. And a lot of them, like, well, the majority of them, just things like this comment doesn't have a period at the end of the sentence.
Oh, okay. Oh, right.
This line of code isn't indented properly. It's got a space in the tab rather than just a tab. I want to get those trivial cosmetic issues fixed as well, because they're annoying when you're reading the code, but also because having people going through and catching those $1 bounties, it means that they're looking at the code. And what I learned working with FreeBSD is most security bugs that we had to deal with were not found by people looking for security bugs. They were found by people who were looking at the code for other reasons, usually because they were working on something in that area and we're going to be changing the code to add some new feature or something. And they say, wait a minute, that looks strange.
Okay.
Wait a minute. That code doesn't look like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. So, it is incredibly valuable just to have people looking at the code, even if they're not looking for any, even if they're not thinking about security, just to have them have people looking at the code and saying, what does this do exactly? Does it do what I think it's supposed to be doing? So, I'm very happy to pay out the $1 bounties just because it means that somebody was looking at that code.
Yeah,
I mean,
spending time
in
on
a
it.
sense,
Yeah.
it's the $1 bounties are a proof of work. If I could, I would be very happy to pay people to look at code, even if they don't find any typos or indentation issues or anything. But it's hard to know if somebody's looking at the code unless they
Yeah,
find
of course.
telling about it. So, um,
Yeah. So because you're actually storing other people's data, how has it been with like have you gotten any like subpoenas or takedown requests or
no,
requests from third parties that they want you
I
got any
haven't
scary emails?
because I mean there's nothing I would be able to do anyway. I can't. It's all encrypted. I can't look at the data. I can't tell what that data is. If somebody, if the Canadian government sends me a subpoena, some court case, give us this guy's data, I can say, well,
Who
okay,
is this guy?
I suppose I can give you the encrypted data, but it won't help you. For the record, they have never asked.
Oh,
Similarly,
okay.
the NSA might be able to go to Amazon and get the data out of S3, but as far as I know,
Yeah.
they haven't. Of course,
Then
U.S. national security letters, whatever it is, I wouldn't necessarily know if they had done that, but it wouldn't help them anyway. And yeah, takedown requests and so on. I fortunately, courts understand that you can't order people to do the impossible.
yeah,
So
that's good.
if I received anything like that, I would just say, well, sorry, I don't know what data it is that you want taken down. Similarly, I've had customers in Europe ask me about GDPR, and my answer to them is, well, if you want to delete data, you can delete data, but if you have a customer that wants their data purged, well, it's up to you to figure out
How
what
to
to
do
do
that?
about your archives, because I don't
I
know
don't
which
know.
bits
Yeah.
belong to that customer.
That's awesome. Do you get a lot of emails from people that lose their keys and stuff like that?
Yes, that's probably the most common support request I have. I lost my keys. Can you delete the data? Because, obviously they don't want to be paying to store data forever that they'll never be able to access. It's unfortunate. Just occasionally I get emails saying, I lost my keys. Can you help me get my data back? And, well, the answer to that is very simple. No, I can't help you with that. But most people who use Tarsnap sort of understand that the whole point is that I cannot get your data back. So I get very few questions like that. I've had a few questions that are somewhat more awkward. Things like, we just fired our sysadmin. Can you help us
And
get
he
our data
has
back? Or,
and he has the keys. Maybe.
yeah, he has the keys,
Oh,
or we have the keys, but he's the only person who knows the passphrase on the keys.
oh.
And various other variants of that. Our sysadmin just went off on his honeymoon for 2 weeks, and we don't know how to get in touch with him. Um,
Oh,
but again, I can't help with those sorts of situations, except preemptively by warning people. Be aware. You ideally have some system in place where you check that you are able to restore your backups. Pretend that somebody is just got fired or got sick, is in the hospital, got hit by a bus, is on his honeymoon, and make sure you have a way of restoring the data even without some critical person. But I mean, everybody's been very understanding. But when a company's desperate, they really need their data back. They're going to ask. I can totally understand that.
yeah. So for all of our listeners that want to try out Torsnap but haven't tried out Torsnap, do you have any best practices or recommended usage?
I mean, there's a lot of suggestions. First, of course, make sure that you test restoring backup. The most common situation, the most common case where people write to me and say, we've lost the keys, is they had a server. That server was storing data regularly. They decommissioned the server, but they never copied those keys anywhere else. Now,
Oh,
usually it's just they no longer need that data, but occasionally it's they decommissioned the server, or the server broke rather, and they actually need that server's data, but they don't have the keys. So, make sure you put the keys somewhere safe because you won't be able to get your data back without those keys. And if the keys are on the same system that you're backing up and not anywhere else, then at the point you need to get your data back, you probably will not have access to those keys.
Do you know if anyone has lost their keys and then tried to spend a lot of money recovering those keys and ran
Yes,
recovery
I have.
attacks? And
I've heard stories about people sending disks off to data recovery services to to take apart the disk and read it with some special tools to try to recover their Tarsnap keys.
was it
I
successful
know.
or
Hmm?
was it successful? Did
Uh,
they succeed in
I
it or?
at least one case was. I think there was at least one case that wasn't as well.
Oh, okay.
I know of several people who have had file system corruption, and they were
Oh,
able to recover their keys just by doing a DD input equals disk pipe through grep, because
what?
Tarsnap key files they're small enough that they'll fit into one sector on a modern 4 kilobyte disk,
Oh,
and
wow.
they start with a header. I think it's start of Tarsnap keys or Tarsnap keys start here, something like that. And then they end with a similar line. So odds are, I mean, if you have an encrypted disk, obviously you won't. But if your disk is not encrypted, then odds are you'll be able to recover your Tarsnap keys just by reading the raw disk and looking for the start and end lines. Obviously not something
That's
you
nice.
want to be relying on, but I'm
Possible.
happy to say that has worked for several people.
That's nice. That's very nice. So, what does the future hold for Tarsnap? What features are you currently working on, and what do you want to have in Tarsnap for the soon future?
So right now, I'm mostly working on back-end issues, improving the performance of the data store that I use on the back end. A lot of this work will make it easier for me to add functionality to the website. So things like letting people log into the website and say, I've lost the keys to this machine, delete this data for me. Obviously, at the point that I'm going to be doing that, I want to have other functionality in there, like letting people say, here's my GPG public key. If I request anything, send an
It
encrypted
must be
email to this
done.
address to get confirmation. One thing that Tarsnap doesn't do yet through the website is letting people reset their passwords. So I get quite a few emails from people who have forgotten their passwords. So obviously I want to get that run through the website. So yeah, I have a long list of functionality I want to have on the website that is sort of waiting for me to finish restructuring the data store. I don't want to add a whole bunch of stuff which is being stored in an old data store and then have to change it all to use a new data store. So I want to get the new data store in place first. And then, yeah, once that's done, then that same data, well, a duplicate of that data store would end up getting used for improving there's a lot of data that's stored in a file system, a whole bunch of small files, which really should be in a more sophisticated data store. Once that's done, then I can do things that will improve the performance of Tarsnap, both in terms of how much data throughput I can get and also to make extracts a bit faster. Right now, extracts are relatively low performance because they're latency bound. The way that Tar works natively, it will read one block of data, figure out what to do with it, and then read the next block of data. That works great if you're reading from a tape or from a local disk. Doesn't work quite so well when you're on a different continent and it takes 200 milliseconds to request each block.
Yeah.
So people in Europe have been a bit annoyed by the time it takes to restore their data. People in Australia have been very annoyed by how long it takes to get their data. There's ways around this. The easiest way to speed up Tarsnap extracts is to do multiple extracts in parallel, because that way Tarsnap each process can extract a different set of files and then skip over the data from the other files that they're not extracting. Another option for people in far-flung parts of the world is spin up an EC2 instance in the east coast of the US. You can extract data to there very easily and then copy the data out somewhere else. Of course, at that point, you're trusting Amazon with the data if you do that. So it depends on your security needs. But yeah, once I have the back end of the server reorganized, use a different data store, I can handle more requests in parallel, then I can restructure the client to actually make more requests in parallel. Some sort of prefetching of data. There's a lot of trade-offs there. If you prefetch too much data, then you end up slowing people down by downloading data that they didn't actually need. But there's reasonable ways of doing the trade-offs that are better than just only read one block at a time.
How do you run Torsnap? I think because I assume you're the longest running user of Torsnap, so you must figure out the
Yes.
perfect way to continuously do backups.
So all of my systems I have doing backups every hour.
With cron or
Just running from cron, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Oh,
all of the servers are just backing up the entire system every hour. On my laptop, I'm backing up Etsy, I think Etsy user local Etsy, and my home directories. On my laptop, I've got a lot more software installed on my laptop than I do on the servers, of course. I've got, you know,
yeah.
KDE, Chrome, Firefox, Thunderbird. There's not much point archiving all of the binaries for those programs.
Yeah, of course.
If this laptop dies and I get a new laptop, I'm going to be reinstalling those. I'll be downloading those tools, all those packages anyway. I'm not going to want to restore the old versions of them. So, there's no point archiving those. But my home directory, obviously, I want to have archived. A few exclusions. I don't want to archive the Chrome's cache because there's data files come in and out of that cache. They're not likely to be useful, but if I did archive that cache, it would be more than half of the data I was uploading every day would just be these temporary files. But that's my home directories, a few configuration files, and then exclude things that I know change frequently and aren't useful. And
Oh, okay.
I'm careful with my servers and my laptop doing backups. I do not run any hourly backups on the hour. I don't run any of them on the half hour. Aside from that, when I'm setting up a system, I pick a random number between 1 and 59. That's the minute that it will run on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. All right. What's also interesting about Torsnap, this entrepreneurial aspect of it, that you managed to build this startup that was very successful in doing that. Do you have any recommendations for people that are thinking of starting not a backup service, but a similar concept of starting their own stuff?
Recommendations for running startups. There's a lot of people in the startup community who say that I'm the last person to ask for business advice.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of it is sort of the basic principles that everybody already knows. If you build a good product, that's the most important thing. If you can make sure that your existing customers love your product. Tarsnap has never spent money on advertising except for I spent maybe $200 as an experiment on Google
Ads.
AdWords and I think a little bit on Facebook. I didn't get any customers from that. Tarsnap spends money sponsoring open source events. It's been a sponsor of BSD the BSD conference in Ottawa for a long time.
And the FreeBSD Foundation as well, right?
And
Or...
yeah, so
Nice.
the way I've worked it is that every year Tarsnap contributes an amount equal to its December profits to open source. So essentially, Tarsnap makes money for 11 months of the year, and then the last month is making money for open source.
That's awesome.
Now, of course, I don't want to wait until December to give money to people. So what's happened is, I can sort of predict roughly how much money I'll have from the December profits. But early in the year, I will spend money, sponsoring BSDCan conference, Your BSDCon I've sponsored twice, I think. Have a feeling there's another conference. I can't remember which one. The BSD Now podcast I've been sponsoring for a while.
Oh, nice.
And then at the end of the year, whatever's left in the budget, when it comes to January 1st, and I know how much money Tarsnap made in December, I say, well, okay, take off what I already gave to open source earlier in the year, and the FreeBSD Foundation gets what's left.
That's awesome. That's great.
I mean, really, Tarsnap would not exist without open source. It runs on FreeBSD, but it's also built around libarchive, which was written originally by Tim Keinsel, and when he started writing it, he was a FreeBSD developer, and in fact, he started writing it because he wanted to build a better package tool for FreeBSD. So in a way, it also only exists because of FreeBSD. But without the BSD licensed software, I wouldn't have even gotten started. If in 2006 I'd been thinking to myself, maybe I should build a backup tool. Wait, there isn't anything out there I can use I need to write my own code for generating tar archives, for traversing the file
Yeah.
system and figuring out what. No, no, I don't want to deal with that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it was because libarchive existed that handled the tar aspects of things. Because Amazon S3 existed that handled the durable storage side of things. The stuff in the middle, you know, writing code for cryptography, writing code for networking, that stuff I'm good at. But the stuff on either side, I have no talent for, and I would not have wanted to do. So it's only because those things existed that I could fill that gap in the middle to create Tarsnap. So I
Uh,
owe a lot to the open source community, and I feel that giving 1 month out of 12 back to the community is really the least I can do.
was Scrypt your first crypto project, or have you been involved in other ciphers and
I mean,
crypto schemes, or?
I had implemented a whole bunch of crypto code before, but
Okay.
Script is the first new cryptographic algorithm that I developed. So yeah, Script is the first thing which is my own, as opposed to just my implementation of somebody else's algorithms.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's really impressive then.
Well, I mean that's everybody starts somewhere, right? If you look at all of the major people in the crypto world, they all got started by reading other people's research papers and implementing their code, writing code for other people's algorithms, and maybe implementing attacks on other people's algorithms, and eventually
Yeah.
you learn enough about these things to feel comfortable doing your
Write
own.
your
And
own. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, even with Script, I before I published it, I sent it around to a bunch of cryptographers and said, "Hey, this seems like something you might be interested in. Does it look right to you? Do you see any problems with it?" And
What feedback did you get?
it was all very supportive.
Oh, nice.
I'm not going to mention names because I don't know if people want to be, it was
No,
all a
of course
private
not.
email and so on. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, it was all very supportive. People, some people saying, yeah, I I was thinking about doing this a few years back, but I never got around to it. It definitely seems like something we need. Seems like your design is good. The proof of security you've got makes sense. So it was all very very positive feedback.
That's amazing.
I think
Yeah.
people don't realize how generous academics are with their time with things like this. Um, I mean, it was mostly university professors I was writing to, and you know, they spend their time teaching, they spend their time doing research, but they also spend their time reviewing papers for journals, and having someone write to you with. I mean, they get a whole bunch of garbage as well, but having someone write to you with something that's reasonably well written, it happens to me as well. People send me papers, and I really enjoy seeing people's research. So, if people have novel, well-written research, don't hesitate to send it to academics. It's part of their job to look at these things.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned this. I was talking with Stephen, a good friend of mine, who's an academic professor, yesterday, and he's working on like a research magazine, research magazine, publishing research in economics and stuff like that. And I asked him, how do you manage to read all these white papers and all these essays over the years? And he was like, I love this. I get so intellectually stimulated, and it's just so fun to see all this new research.
Hmm.
And he's been doing that for like 40 years. So
Yeah.
they're
And
truly amazing.
academics will be very helpful even if you're not sending them anything new. I mean, I realized this in the middle of my doctorate when I I was looking at a paper which was written by an academic at, I think it was University of Texas. Um, I needed some more information about the test cases he was using for the paper. So I sent him an email at his university email address, the one that was in the paper, and about 12 hours later, I got an email back from Amazon, because it turned out that since writing that paper, he had left the University of Texas. He was now a vice president at Amazon.
Oh, wow.
But despite being one of the most senior people in Amazon, this was 2002, I think, maybe 2003. So Amazon didn't have very many vice presidents back then. But he was very generous with it. He loved the fact that a doctoral student was writing to him asking for information about his research. He was incredibly generous with his time to help me out. Even though he was obviously very busy helping to
Yeah,
run Amazon at the time.
that's awesome. Is he still around at Amazon, or do you know what
Uh,
he's doing
I
now?
I believe he moved to Google in 2005 or 2006. I
Okay,
don't recall where he is now. He might still be at Google. I don't know.
all right. So, is there anything we missed about Torsnap that we didn't cover?
About Tarsnap in particular, can't think of anything. What one tool that sort of spun off from Tarsnap that we haven't talked about yet is S-Pipe-D.
What is
And
S-Pipe-D?
so S-Pipe-D is a tool for creating symmetrically encrypted secure pipes. So a lot of people have used S-Tunnel.
Yeah.
It's similar to S-Tunnel, except with S-Tunnel, you're using TLS. You've got one side has a TLS certificate, the other side is connecting to it, validating host names, whatever. S-Pipe-D, it does not rely on TLS because it's not relying on certificates. It's not asymmetrical like that. It is, you've got two systems, you want them to talk to each other securely, you put a key, the same key on both systems. And that
Okay.
shared key is used to secure the connection. Because of this, it is far simpler. It's grown slightly over the years, but last time I looked it up, it was something like 5,000 lines of code.
How
So,
do you get the same key to both machines securely?
well, I mean, the idea is these are both machines under your control.
Okay,
So,
okay.
for instance, one way I use it, I have a mail server for Tarsnap. All of the
Yeah.
outgoing email and also my personal incoming email go through that mail server.
Okay.
Every time I deploy a new server for Tarsnap, I put a key file onto that server, which is the SMTP key, which
Okay,
is
okay.
shared by the mail server, and using that key and S-Pipe-D, the QMail on the new server sends email to localhost port 8025, which connects to S-Pipe-D, which connects to port 8025 on the mail server, which is S-Pipe-D, which then connects to port 25 on the loopback interface on the mail server, which just talks to QMail again. So
Oh,
there's unencrypted connections over the loopback interface, but the connection going over the internet or over Amazon's
it's
network, I guess,
encrypted. Yeah.
is all encrypted with S-Pipe-D.
That's great. And is that running script as well, or what?
No, it's not
What
using
chip?
script because you don't need, for a case like this, you don't need to be using passwords.
Okay.
The whole point of script is passwords don't have a lot of entropy in them. So you need to have a strong key derivation function that sort of boosts the amount of entropy you have. You're not
It's
actually
hard.
increasing entropy, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
increasing the cost of searching.
Yeah.
For something like S-Pipe-D, generating a key file is just get 32 bytes from dev random.
All
32,
right.
32 bytes from dev random is 256 bits of entropy, so that's a secure key for you.
Oh yeah.
So
So, how
using
does
S-Pipe-D.
Torsnap? Sorry. How does Torsnap use this?
Well, so I mean, all of the servers that want to talk to each other, whether it's servers sending mail to the mail server, whether it's systems connecting to the package building system, so that I can get new FreeBSD packages on these systems that I built myself every night. Whether it's me checking my own email, I have POP3 running over SMTP. Sorry, POP3
Oh,
running
oh,
over S-Pipe-D, going to the
oh
mail
yeah.
server. So essentially, it's a way of having a socket connecting to a socket,
Encrypted socket. Yeah.
but it's encrypted. So suddenly it doesn't matter if these sockets are on the same system or on the same network or different networks around the world. It acts just like opening a TCP connection, except it's secure and it's just a drop in. Instead of connecting to port 25 on the other system, you connect to S-Pipe-D here, and then S-Pipe-D there connects to port 25 on that system.
Oh, nice.
So, it's pipes for connecting things together. That's basically what it comes down to. But it's a very simple tool, but it makes so many things more easier and removes worries. And you can do these things with S-Tunnel, but then you need to worry about every time there's a new OpenSSL vulnerability. SPIPD, it's really simple. Less code means less vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yeah, and that code has it been any CVs to that code, or has it been audited by an external party that has found bugs, or
It hasn't had
has
any
it?
formal audits, although I mean the Tarsnap's bug bounties do apply to it. I think there were a couple very small issues, typos and so on. No serious bugs people have found in it. Obviously, I would be very happy to have more people looking at it, but yeah, I mean there have not been any security vulnerabilities found in it to date.
Oh,
And
that's good. That's
given
good.
given how simple it is, I really don't know how you could. It's hard to imagine any place that you could have a security vulnerability, or really any bug at all, that wouldn't make SPIPD just stop working completely. One of the nice things about cryptography, if you encrypt things wrong, they won't decrypt correctly.
Yeah.
With things like TLS, where there are many different protocols that people can use, they start with a negotiation. These are the protocols
A
I like. These are the
handshake.
ones that you
Yeah.
like. Okay, let's pick this one. It's easy to have bugs lurking there because most people will end up using the same protocol, but there might be bugs in the protocols that people don't use. SPIPD, there's only one protocol. The data is encrypted with AES. It's authenticated with HMAC SHA-256. If there was a bug in there, it wouldn't work. Yeah. So it's the design as well as the simplicity makes it something I would trust far more.
And why did you create that? Just to have a secure socket way, or did you want
Yeah,
to
I
replace
wanted
another
to
tool, or?
have systems able to communicate with each other securely. Part of it was being able to check my email securely without dealing with going through OpenSSH and STunnel, but actually, I think originally I was checking my email going over SSH-L, but anyway, there's different tunneling tools you can use, but I wanted something simpler. Using persistent SSH connections means that when you move to a different network or your network flakes out, connections die, you need to restart them.
Yeah.
With SPIPD, it behaves like a TCP connection. So
Nice.
if you move to a different network, well, obviously the connections you already had open die, but you open a new connection, it just opens a new connection.
That's very nice. And when did you start this project?
I have a vague feeling it might have been 2012, maybe 2011. I I would have to check the website just to be sure, actually. But it's been around for a while anyway. We do new releases periodically, although there haven't been many major changes to it. Mostly it's just minor cleanups to library code it uses. One other thing I do with SPIPD actually is I do SSH over SPIPD.
Okay.
So I never SSH into servers directly because OpenSSH has had bugs over the years. So I have
Oh, so you add the extra layer of security to
exactly.
it.
So I have OpenSSH listed
Awesome.
only on the loopback connection, and then this very simple cryptographic protocol is encrypting the OpenSSH connection.
Does it affect the latency of it, or does it make it slower, or have you noticed any performance issues?
It doesn't affect latency. I mean, when you first open the connection, there's one round trip of network handshaking, cryptographic handshaking. So adds some milliseconds there for opening the connection. But the cryptographic operations to establish connection are very fast. And then once you've got the connection running, packets are padded out, and there's a checksum added, HMAC added. So reduces bandwidth very slightly, but for certainly from connecting from home over the internet connection I have here, it's not anything that I would notice. If you're trying to run multiple gigabits per second, you would probably notice it can't sustain that because the crypto operations slow things down. But for the sorts of purposes I use it for, no, there's no performance impact at all.
That's great. And is it ported to a wide majority of? So you're maintaining the packet. It's on OpenBSD, FreeBSD.
Yeah.
Or...
So as far as I'm aware, SPIPD will run on any POSIX compliant system that has OpenSSH. Sorry, that has OpenSSL. Because I use
Okay,
OpenSSL
great.
for some of the basic crypto operations. Not for any. I don't use any of the TLS protocol stuff, but I use the basic fundamental crypto operations from there. But yeah, there's people running S5D on FreeBSD, OpenBSD, NetBSD, Linux, Solaris, OS 10, Irix, Windows, Minix.
Oh, nice.
I know there's a few others out there I haven't mentioned, but yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it should run basically anywhere that you can imagine that's remotely Unixy.
that's nice. Is it written in C or?
It is all written in C, yes.
Nice. Yeah, I think I've gotten through all my questions. Have I forgotten anything that you want to mention, or
I
we
can't
think?
think of anything else.
All right. Me personally, I think it's amazing what you've done. Just created this startup project that has just grown tremendously and it's actually providing really good value. And then you're like, hey, we need to create some secure functions, and then you create script, which is amazing. So thank you for Torsnap. I would
Thank
like to.
you.
So where do people follow your work?
I mean, you can go to the Tarsnap website, and Tarsnap obviously is there, and on the left side of the page, you'll see links to the open source projects there as well. So you'll see script, S-Pipe-D, and key value, which we haven't talked about, but it's a key value data store, not at all relevant to security, but some people may find it interesting.
Oh, nice. Is it fast or?
Yeah, so that's the data store I'm developing for use for the Tarsnap backend, and it's tuned for what I need personally, but yes, it is designed to be very fast. I mean, on a single system, we're looking at like 500,000 key value operations per second.
Oh, that's nice. Have you looked at other like Level DB and LMDB and existing
I
ones? And
I looked at a lot of other key value data stores, and I wrote my own because I didn't think that they were good enough.
awesome, awesome. And you're running it? Are you running it in production or?
It is. It's currently running in production for some parts of the Tarsnap website. It's not being used for the Tarsnap service itself yet. That will come hopefully fairly soon. But yeah, I'm sort of obviously the Tarsnap service, since it's storing backups. That's the last place I want to put anything new. So I want to make sure
Yeah,
everything's thoroughly tested on
it's
other places
safe and
first.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you do a lot of CI testing? Like, how do you test that it's not gonna break everyone's backup?
I
Do
mean,
you have a test system built up or?
yeah, I have a bunch of tests that I run. I can deploy a sort of a copy of the Tarsnap service onto my laptop, obviously, a different S3 bucket and so on, to run various tests there. And then all the components get tested separately as well, of course.
Awesome, awesome. All right, thank you so much for taking the time. I certainly learned a lot, and I'm thankful that you keep Tarsnap awesome and secure.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.